Pines, what's been going on there. We're going to talk about the disconnect between that obvious signal versus most people failure to recognize that signal, and then just talk about some other topics that we're curious and interested in. So with that, we'll start with those. We'll kind of see where things go. And if you have any questions, just like we've been doing, make sure to throw it in the live chat with caps. And hopefully I'll see it. If not, I apologize, but we'll leave that for the closer to the end of the show. So Brian, welcome to Maple Bitcoin, your debut. How you feeling?
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me. I feel like I'm just like, I'm skating onto the YouTube ice right here with my my Canadian friends. I don't know.
That's a good way to put it.
Hockey? All Canadians like hockey, right?
Yeah, we've had some good battles with the US in the last couple of years, and I think we got the best of you in the Four Nations Cup. And there was a lot of controversy with the 51st state in Canada becoming the 51st state. But I think what I've heard anyways is that you guys are actually going to become the 11th province now after that hockey game.
Wow. I saw the clips. I saw the clips.
Yeah, instead of the 51st state, we'll do the 11th province.
Yeah, you guys are joining Canada. Sorry about that. Okay, well, let's get going. Rajat, how are you feeling, man?
Doing good. I'm doing good.
Doing good. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll cut the BS today. Let's start with Trump. We're gonna start with the clip, but I think it's better just to skip that. We don't want to trigger too many people on a Friday. We got to be here. We're gonna keep things nice and relaxed. So I want to start with the quote here from Trump. This was straight from the horse's mouth himself. He said, with the right legal framework, institutions large and small will be liberated to invest, innovate, and take part in one of the most exciting technological revolutions in modern history. It's so big, it's, I think, as big as you can get. So that was Trump's words. They had a digital summit somewhere yesterday. That was him coming in on the live stream. And then we had some more chat about Bow Pines. But what are you guys' first thoughts on that? It's so big, it's, I think, as big as you can get, obviously in reference to Bitcoin. What do you think, Brian? Kick things off here.
Yeah, so typical quote, like hearing you read it is just funny. Like the order of words is always funny. But the biggest, and anytime Trump gets brought up for me, I've been recently just throwing it all the way back to did the day that he bought the cheeseburger with Bitcoin at PubKey was the exact day that the Federal Reserve lowered like interest rates for the first time. And like that, like talking about like a big deal. Like Bitcoin is the most mainstream that it's ever been. It's being talked about at the highest level of power like in the world right now, right? And that day for me was like a big, like that was an actual like hairs on my arm like up day, because you have the potential leader of the free world like using Bitcoin as money in the state of New York on the same exact day that a committee of people, the Federal Reserve, is like choosing the supply of dollars in the world, right? And just that dichotomy I thought was super, super interesting. And so, and then the fact that, yeah, that's being followed through now with just, random summits and quotes and like saying things is, I think it's positive. Like it's good for Bitcoin. I think it's very incredible and good for Bitcoin.
To be honest, I don't think he understands Bitcoin though. I don't think he's there yet. I think he's probably spent a lot of time reading headlines and being talked to about crypto by all these people that he's surrounded by, like let's say Brad Garlinghouse. But I don't think he understands. I don't think he gets it.
See, I have a different theory on that myself. But the reason I say that is just not so much what he said. I have a hard time with it because when he spoke at Bitcoin Conference 2024, there was a bunch of people who came out and said, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. RFK knows what he's talking about. Everybody needs to bow down to RFK. But I've listened to Trump's speech several times now, and he talked a lot about a couple different things that a lot of people, I think, missed about that. And the biggest one for me was energy. He keeps talking about energy over and over and over again. And he actually brought up his uncle, John Trump, who was a professor at MIT. And I don't know if people are aware of this. This is something that I learned as of late. But if you can look this up yourself, look at who received Nikola Tesla's documents after he died. And you will find that it was, in fact, Trump's Uncle John Trump that got the document. So just this the way I see it. I know that I saw a comment in here from Mike, said there's a lot of people who don't think that Trump's serious about this. And that I think that that's part of it. I just think that people see him, they have this negative thoughts and lens when they see Trump, a lot of people anyways, and they don't really hear what he says. They just kind of see him for what we've been told he is. My opinion on it is that he doesn't really just say things to say it. So why bring up his Uncle Trump, first of all, talking about energy at a Bitcoin conference? What was in the documents that his Uncle John received? And how does that kind of tie into where we are right now? He's been talking about the AI, the Bitcoin, and how much energy we need, which I think is really refreshing from a guy from Canada's perspective who, for the last couple of years, all we've heard is how bad energy is and how bad carbon is and all that kind of bullshit. So that's kind of how I see it. I'm not 100% on it, but I think that there's something there that some people might be missing.
I think so. At the highest level, when anything goes mainstream, there's always that tension between the people that are like in the weeds and understand it all the way to the like nth degree of detail. Tension between the characters and the words and the ways that something actually becomes mainstream. And that's something I've been thinking about like a lot. Is just and honestly, that's something that talking about Bitcoin on YouTube teaches you of just like, and you guys get this. You're just like when you read the comments, you're just like, you can say something as articulate as possible for like 12 minutes and just comments are just like, and it's not, so it's when like, there's zero way to talk about Bitcoin in a soundbite at the highest level of the world that will like serve every person that's literally listening to it. Like it's impossible. And it's weird that like there's literally like human language is like hitting the ceiling of like even communicating anything.
Yeah. I agree. What do you think on that, Rajat?
I don't think most people are really going to. I see. I feel like a lot of people think that Bitcoin is going to be adopted just quickly. It's going to happen ASAP. I think I'm starting to not believe in that anymore because I'm seeing more and more. So, and in the beginning, I can say right off the bat that in the beginning, when I just figured out how Bitcoin works, I was so willing to help people and teach people and help them understand where this is going. I still like doing it, but I feel like now there are certain people who they're not gonna adopt it. They're gonna be forced into it. Like they're gonna start looking at it when Bitcoin is at $10 million, when Bitcoin is at $100 million. So those people completely irrelevant. I mean, Bitcoin's still going to get to those prices. Those people are just going to be left behind, right? And those people aren't going to adopt it. I don't know how Trump is thinking right now. I have a feeling that Trump is more into diversification, but I mean, by then, I don't know if he's even going to be alive. Who even knows, right? But at some point, all the people who don't quite understand it, who don't quite see the value of a digital store of value, they're gonna be gone, right? So it won't really matter. I think Bitcoin globally is going to be adopted regardless. Everybody on Earth is going to get Bitcoin. It's like they say, everybody's going to get Bitcoin at the price that they deserve. They're going to pay millions of dollars. Most people are going to ignore Bitcoin until it's $1 million, $2 million, $5 million. They're not going to adopt it. And the U.S. government doing this, I don't know. I think it's just going to concentrate it in the U.S. It's going to concentrate holdings in the U.S. And I mean, of course, there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, you buy Bitcoin at the price you deserve. If the U.S. government buys 1 million Bitcoin, they're going to have 5% of the total supply, and of course, they're going to have control. But how do you know that other countries aren't going to start front running them? Like the way that he's saying it, I feel like he's trying to convince the people around him that Bitcoin is a good thing, rather than the people around him already knowing.
Yeah, I think him as a person is just liking, like he likes the people that like it, and he likes bothering the people that have publicly said that they don't like it. It's like it's more of a power, like an influence thing. And I like how you even brought up the word influence in your thing of like, no, correct. That's why I've been trying to relay again, thinking like broad principles on YouTube. It's like having any amount of Bitcoin, 0.01, 0.1, point whatever, is a big deal. Like that is a big deal from an influence perspective. If you're just looking at the exchange rate to fiat money today, totally. Like there's other, like it's not, you can't feel the weight of that because we've all been programmed to like fiat money is like slipping through our hands. Like that's exactly literally the problem. And so thinking that equivalent amount of Bitcoin, and then a lot of people still think about it as like just stocks or like whatever. And so it's hard for them to connect the influence. And you're right, the majority of people, they're just surviving. They're not even thinking about how to have influence in the world.
Yeah, most people are just trying to get to the end of their paycheck. Most people are just
to
trying
Friday.
to, yeah,
Happy Friday.
Exactly. Like that's the thing. Most people are just worried about being able to make it to the end of the paycheck without going completely broke, while still having food, while still being able to do whatever they need to. Most people aren't in it to win. Most people are just in it to survive. Like they just want to get to the finish line at some point. That's the key. And all these people, keep in mind, we are already seeing more and more people working into their 70s. By the time millennials are retiring, we're going to see people working till their 80s, 90s, I think. And it's just going to get worse and worse from there. People are going to be dying on the Walmart floor.
Are you saying this like this is your prediction for the future? Because I think that's people die on the Walmart floor. Is that what you said?
Absolutely. That's already happening. People are already dying on the Walmart floors. Like
Yeah.
there are articles of it. There are senior citizens who are working at Walmart and they're dying because of old age.
But do you think that I agree with you in the sense that if Bitcoin didn't exist, that's where we'd be going. But I think that we're kind of moving away from that. Hopefully, will everybody be on board? No. And
No,
how
but
long
it
will it
depends
take?
on
I have no idea.
It depends on whether you adopt Bitcoin or not, right? It's not like so for people who adopt Bitcoin, obviously housing is getting cheaper. But if you didn't adopt Bitcoin, you don't really benefit from housing getting cheaper. Right? You don't really, let's say, for example, if you just save in US dollars and you just completely ignore Bitcoin, your life is going to get more expensive forever. It's going to keep getting more expensive. It's going to keep getting worse and worse. But if you adopt Bitcoin, obviously your life gets cheaper. So there's going to be people who hold off on adopting Bitcoin because they didn't get in at 10,000, they didn't get in at 20,000, they didn't get in at whatever price. And at that point, Bitcoin is going to be millions of dollars, and they're still going to be thinking, "Oh, I'm too late. I'm too late. I can't get in now. I first saw it at 10,000. Why didn't I buy it at 10,000?" They're going to keep having these problems with their ego. It's like the concept that Bitcoin is a test of your ego. 100% it is, because people are going to keep ignoring it. They're going to keep not seeing it. They're going to keep trying to think about. They're going to have to keep thinking about what to do by the end of the week, at the end of the month, just to survive, and they won't have the time to study Bitcoin. They won't really care for it. But I do think though that if the US adopts Bitcoin, they're going to probably have merchants adopting Bitcoin, and that's probably going to speed up, or sorry, merchants accepting Bitcoin. That's probably going to speed up adoption pretty fast compared to how it would be otherwise.
It's also quietly getting into the backbone of like the S&P 500 is already like tied to Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin and the S&P 500 are already connected. Like it just being like Bitcoin on balance sheets and Bitcoin in, or like pension funds allocating to the ETF. Like it's just like it's already kind of quietly like in the economy. But those same people still don't even have there is still a disconnect between people. They're not even connected to the economy in that sense either. Like the financialization of the economy, the person just like working with their labor at any age doesn't even Bitcoin, stocks, their house, anything that like they're the only thing they're connected to is fiat money, which does suck.
Yeah, I think that's probably where we'll continue this conversation. I think in terms of like the disconnect between the, what people are seeing and hearing. I shouldn't say people are, because I think even in Bitcoin, there's when we were talking about this before the show, you guys didn't even see what Trump said yesterday and what Bo Pines had mentioned. So, if Bitcoiners aren't really paying attention to it right now, I don't think that the average person is. But kind of my thoughts on this right now is with Trump, it's weird to me because you think a guy like Trump. So think back to his book. I always think back to this book. He had a book called The Art of the Deal. And The Art of the Deal was mostly based on the art of war. And in the art of war, there's deception. It's all information. It's different strategies that don't necessarily involve weapons. And so to me, what I'm sensing here and kind of how I feel about this whole thing is like between Trump and his team, people like Bo Pines, Cynthia Lummis, everybody who's like trying to get the message out here right now. You have to ask yourself, like, why? Why are they in such a? They're doing this on purpose. They're not meeting behind closed doors and coming up with a big scheme of getting the a huge amount of Bitcoin. They're doing it out in the public. And to me, that suggests that they're giving a warning signal to people, anybody who's willing to listen, that we are going to be doing this. We're going to be buying as much as we possibly can. That's what Bo Pines mentioned yesterday when somebody said, how much is the U.S. government, how much Bitcoin is the U.S. government planning on buying? And he said, that's like asking somebody how much gold they want or how many dollars they want. He said, there's no limit on how much we're going to buy here. And so to me, I think that they're doing their best, as best they can, for anybody who will listen, to try to warn people before we start buying, get some.
But why would they care about the average person? I have a feeling that they don't. Honestly, I mean, the way that everything makes sense is that they don't actually understand Bitcoin. Maybe they think that they're going to rug pull people. Maybe they're going to end up buying more gold. I mean, I don't know. Maybe even that doesn't make any sense. But why would they do this publicly if they don't have, if they don't have the Bitcoin yet? Why would they tell everybody, oh, we're going to buy 1 million Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, I'll speak first because Brian's obviously in the US, so he has a better feel on the pulse there. But like, to me, I don't know, everything that I've seen from afar with Trump, I know there's a lot of different opinions on him, but to me, I think that when he says things like the best is yet to come, when he talks about the golden age, I think that he realizes that that's not going to happen just if the government gets rich. And one of the things that he said back in 2016 at his speech was, we're giving power back to the people. And he's always been a big guy of like, instead of the federal government wanting to control things, he wants states to be able to do that, decentralized, which falls in line with Bitcoin. And so that's kind of my takeaway from it. I don't know for sure. I don't know what the team is thinking at all times or any time really, but what do you think on that, Brian?
So I was in DC for Trump V1 inauguration. And like, no, when he said like, like the swamp has prospered and the people have not, like, he's like, the people here have prospered and the people have not. No, like, I thought that was a really powerful sentence. Like when he said that, I think a lot of it, why are they saying it ahead of time? I think a lot of it is signaling to decision makers that are like in the middle on the fence. You have like, that's a lot of what it is that you have the people that have the bully pulpit and are like driving the agenda that they see, and then you have the like obvious people that are just like, no, they're saying the opposite of like everything. And then you have a lot of people that are just kind of more the like, I don't know, pragmatic and it themselves, or like whatever, live in swing districts. I don't know. It's like those kind of people that are choosing on a case by case basis like what to do. And honestly, I think those are the people, in the same way that even today we're having a discussion of like, do they really know what they're doing? Does the plan make sense? Like there's people there that are asking like, dude, like that doesn't make any sense. Like, why do you why do you end like at the other summit the other day? Like, why did he say the thing of like never sell? But then like that's what they say. Like, who knows? Like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you like undercutting it with like weird humor at the same time? Like, because that's hard. It is hard to follow a leader. And I'm just saying this in a very general leadership sense. Like, it's very hard to follow a leader that then is like kind of undercutting a serious point with humor, because then you're not, because humor is positive and good in certain, like in lots of circumstances. But if you're just like, I'm trying to follow you into battle, I'm trying to follow you down this rational, logical argument, like down this thing, it's kind of confusing. Like, and that's why even outside of that, like I have my own personal gripe now with the like never sell thing, but like just in strictly like, why are they saying it? They're saying it because they're trying to convince the other decision makers around them that need to also go along with it.
Yeah, so maybe let's I think we're kind of in agreement here that the US is clearly going to be buying a lot of Bitcoin. So let's maybe shift focus a little bit to like, if that's really obvious to guys like us and probably whoever's watching this, that the US here is going to be buying Bitcoin. Like, it's not really a theory anymore. It's like written into an executive order they're going to use neutral, was it budget neutral funds to acquire more Bitcoin, no limit on that Bitcoin. So like, if that's what we're seeing, why is the average person kind of dragging their feet and not really seeing what we are? Like, what's the disconnect there?
I have a thought. I think it's because I was going to say this back to the Walmart thing. Like, I think people have been, I don't want to say like lied to. Like, people are tired. Like, they're tired. They've tried to poke their head out, or they've tried to like believe in the religion or the protocol or the like self-help book, or they tried to start their own business, or they did what their rich uncle said they should do, or they like whatever. I think most people, like as a kid, this is like you start with optimism. Like you're like most of the time, everyone's situation is different, but there's some semblance of like optimism of you can be the astronaut, you can be the whatever, you can be the whatever. And then literally your life just like beats you down. Like literally at every single turn, most people's lives just punch them in their face and are like, no, you can't do that. No, your dream doesn't make sense. No, whatever is in you, that's not true. Be rational. And so we're not even set up to even be able to hold any sort of opportunity. Most people's brains are just not ready at all, whether it's Bitcoin or anything. And that's why I think there's a disconnect.
I think they're scared of risk. Most people can't. They don't want to go against the status quo. They don't want to go against. And yeah, what Skate Boy PSN said. Most people are too unmotivated to do the work to learn. They're not willing to put in the hours. We take thousands of hours to. For me personally, I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, it took me thousands of hours to learn. I'm not exaggerating. I thought Bitcoin was a scam. The way that I think, I ask more questions. I learn something and I ask more questions. I learn something and I ask more questions. At some point, it just becomes obvious after you spend a certain amount of hours. If you followed me on Twitter, if you followed me on X, you could see the switch. Like there was a switch. And once the switch was flipped, it was completely different. Before that, I was talking about real estate. I was talking about how to build wealth with passive income, how to get dividends. And I think my threads were pretty great when I was teaching about the legacy financial system, but it was because I didn't completely even think about a certain angle. I didn't think that the US dollar could be replaced. I just thought, oh, if you keep stacking US dollars, I'm in Canada, by the way. If you keep stacking US dollars, you're going to do even better than even just the Canadian dollar. And that's how I thought of it. And I'm a financial professional. I've worked in finance for 10 years. So if I wasn't getting it, if it took me thousands of hours to get it, how long will it take the regular person who has no finance background, who doesn't understand the basics, who doesn't really want to put in the time? Like my wife, for example, I don't think she would have touched Bitcoin at all if I hadn't talked to her about it. So the average person is years, I would say even a couple of decades behind. There was a video from this guy. He was saying how nobody talks about this scam about Bitcoin. He was saying how, oh, I studied Bitcoin. I understand it. I know everything about it. If you bought it early, if you bought it at any price below this price, you got lucky. That's how people think. He's like, even if it goes to $10 million, you got lucky. But it's not like we're telling people, oh, put a small amount in your portfolio. It's going to $10 million. Maybe. We know for a fact that it's going to $10 million. I know it's going to $10 million. I don't know when, but it will go to $10 million. So if somebody says that I got lucky after I've made so much content about this, after I've tried to help so many people, I mean, what's the point of even trying to help them anymore? It's just the average person is so far behind and they don't care. They just don't care. They're not going to change anything.
I wanted to ask you guys that, even like taking Bitcoin out of it for a second, the Canadian dollar versus the US dollar, what does, thinking about this average person in the disconnect, what's the average person's opinion of that? Like, oh, US dollars are better than Canadian dollars. Is that or I don't know. Is that a thing that the average person thinks about or no?
That's the funny part. Most people don't even know that there's an exchange rate.
Okay. Yeah.
Most people. Okay. So when I book my one-on-one meetings, people say, if they're American, they say, oh, I didn't get charged the whole price because it says a certain price, but then you're charged a lot less in US dollars. So I switched it over to US dollars. But People have no idea. They don't even know that there's an exchange rate.
Right.
Like,
Right.
that's how far behind the average person is. People don't even know that banks are charging them for exchanging money. I actually
Yeah.
think that the people diversify their investments. They buy index funds. I made a tweet about this. People diversify. They buy real estate. They buy all this stuff because they have no idea what they're doing. Like, if you understand what you're doing, you just put everything into Bitcoin. You figure out how Bitcoin works. You know that it's going to take over everything. Why do you need to buy anything else? Why do you need to buy gold and silver? Why do you need to buy stocks? Why do you need to buy real estate? Why do you need to buy bonds? All that stuff is basically, like, the way that I see it, it's a placeholder for Bitcoin.
What do you mean by that, placeholder for Bitcoin?
So until people figure out what Bitcoin is, they're going to use those things to hold their wealth, right? Until every single person on earth is going to eventually have Bitcoin. I don't know when they're going to figure it out. I don't know how long it's going to take. Every single
I just
person in the
thought
world is going to interact with Bitcoin in some way or the other. So that
I just
placeholder,
thought
what
of
I mean,
something.
sorry?
No, sorry. I just thought like I just made a connection that's actually decently new. Like okay, so just again, this average person in Canada, they don't know that there's a price for US dollars. They do know that, like, oh, if I buy stocks, I can get more Canadian dollars. Or if I buy a house, I could get more Canadian dollars. But they don't know that there's an option to buy US dollars. Like, and that's us. We don't know that this average person doesn't know that money is a thing, or like a currency is a thing. They don't, because everyone is sitting, this average person is all in each of these countries. Well, and see, but some countries, then we have the classic examples, right? Of like the Zimbabwe or Venezuela or whatever. Like, then in those, again, like stereotypical classic countries, they know soft currency versus hard currency. Like, that's been that got into the society. But in Canada, it's not into the society that, like, oh, the Canadian dollar is a soft currency.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think most people, the only time that they would ever look to see what the US dollar was, the rate, would be before they go into the US. Like, if they're traveling into the US, like, I live pretty close to the US border here. It's about a 2-hour drive, I'd say, into North Dakota. And so people go in there all the time. They did it a lot more when the US dollar was more at par with the Canadian dollar. But that's the only time that the average person would actually notice the exchange rate, is like how many dollars did they get from the bank when they went to get some American dollars. That's about it.
Right.
I don't think that anybody would ever consider storing US dollars. I shouldn't say anybody, but yes, we're kind of talking about the average person here, not the people who would be, investing in stuff and actively looking into this stuff. But yeah, that's how I see it too, is like nobody even knows about that. So I don't know. Kind of from my perspective here, and this is something that I always have to remind myself too, but like, I like to think in Bitcoin cycles versus years, because when you start thinking in years, even as like the longest term that most people look out as far, and it's like not a whole lot changes. But 4 years ago, I was working at a job as a CPA. I had like a very minimal amount of Bitcoin, but since then, like, my whole life has been flipped around. That's in 4 years. So like, I think that people kind of have to get there on their own. You can't force feed this. That's why I don't like the term orange pill, because it seems like you're forcing it on somebody. People have to feel the pain and then look for an alternative. And eventually they will lead to Bitcoin, I think. A lot of people usually start with like gold and silver, I think, when they first realize that, hey, nothing's really backing this dollar here that I use every day. I'm going to go get some gold, or I'm going to go get some silver. And then I think that a lot of that eventually flows into Bitcoin, the people who are willing to put their egos aside. And I think it's the ones that have actually been in there for the shortest amount of time, because if you look at a guy like Peter Schiff, and some of these other gold bugs, I think it's their ego that's getting in the way. Whereas somebody who just ran to silver and gold for safety, they don't have all that baggage that they've been carrying, and they've been telling people about it, their friends and family about it for decades. And I just think that people are so hesitant to admit that they were wrong, and it's going to cost them a lot dearly in the future for that.
Yeah, it's going to cost a lot, and I do think so. Something that we always, I guess, we always kind of forget about is in North America. So we're both Canadian. Me and Joe are Canadian. Brian's American. So in North America, we don't see the U.S. dollar as money. We see it as currency. We see it as just a way to get the things that we want, because we're part of a financial system that works. There's a whole probably 70-80% of the world that has no access to that. They don't get to use money the way that we do. They save in US dollars. Like I have a lot of people who are in my community who save in US dollars, or who used to save in US dollars. They would just buy US dollars and they would hold on to them because they didn't understand there was another way to go. They didn't have access to stocks. They didn't have access to the massive brokerage accounts that we have. So they would just save in US dollars and they would constantly be losing. No matter what they did, they would delay gratification for years. They would give away everything in the moment and try to save for the future, but they would always end up broke. And that's always going to happen. So I think one of the biggest messages that we can get to the rest of the world, even in parts where the US dollar, actually, I don't know if you guys know about this, but there are parts of the world where the US dollar is actually increasing in purchasing power, right? So those parts of the world are the ones that are probably going to be the last ones to really get it. But eventually, I mean, the entire world is going to adopt this thing. Everybody in the world is going to adopt it. I think the US is probably going to be the first to adopt it because the US doesn't really have as many issues as other countries, I guess you can say. People are more focused on just making as much money as they can. They're focused on starting businesses. So now they need to find a way to preserve that wealth. In other countries, people spend hours just getting water to where they live, getting food to where they live. So they don't have the same problems as us. It's first world problems. Inflation is essentially a first world problem that we've designed, we've created, and now we have the entire world suffering because of it. And that's really nasty to me. And I feel like there is something that's going to come. I think the people are worried about the US dollar. If the US dollar gets completely just destroyed, oh, there's going to be a lot of pain in the US. But think about the rest of the world. Think about how much pain the rest of the world is going through because of the US dollar, and how much of their wealth is being stolen because of the US dollar. Over time, we're going to see the adoption happen. It's going to happen regardless of what we do, regardless of what we say. Obviously, we can influence some people to maybe start looking in the right direction, but you can't force anybody. You can't tell anybody to do what's right for them. You can't tell anybody to get in the lifeboat, if that's the analogy we want to go with. You can't force anybody to do anything. All you can do is you can tell them that it's there, that they can protect themselves, they can protect their families, and the rest of the world is, I mean, they're on their own.
Do you think so? Super well said. And this is something I think about a lot, like how, you know, how easy, like it's very easy for me to ping back and forth between the personal investment case for Bitcoin and personal finance case, and then like that kind of world changing case, and like why fiat money is bad, right? And I think people that have done a lot of Bitcoin content, been in for a long time, they ping back and forth like between those very fast. Do you think that blend helps that average person, like, quote unquote, get it or whatever? Or do you think it doesn't? Do you think it like clouds it even like more?
I think the average person just has authority bias. So until the people that they trust and believe in start buying Bitcoin, like a lot of people aren't going to buy Bitcoin until Warren Buffett buys Bitcoin, or
even if we're just like, this can solve, like, fix the money, fix the world. Like that person that gets their investment advice from Warren Buffett, you like coming through the side door of like, hey, totally get what all you're saying, da 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 da. Like this literally, of all options in the world, like can help society. Like actually, they're just like, yeah, like I don't know, like.
I don't think they care about society. I think they're more worried about just doing what the rest of the world is doing. I don't think they care about actually solving problems. I think the majority of people are more worried about being part of a clique, being part of a group of people that are doing the same thing as them.
Because I've said this before, and this honestly just still blows my mind about Bitcoin, and it's why it's probably the highest reason why I think it has just so much staying power is like I can't think of another thing in history or in the current that is like so good for you as an individual and so good for society as a whole, that like, because any other position that you take that's like, oh, I'm going to take society's side, you have to kind of like sacrifice, like the individual in society is always like put at odds, right? You have to like, oh, sacrifice the game theory of yourself in order to like help society or whatever. And Bitcoin masterfully blends both of those in a way that like there isn't and again, that's the message to people on the other end of YouTube is like, that's why people that are like obsessed with Bitcoin, like why it's such a sharp sword and like such a thing that's so that's why, because it like solves that issue.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack here. I don't really know where this leads to, but I 100% agree with that. Like that, I think that the one thing that the government has done really well through the years is divide people. Every single thing that they do, if they're not distracting, they're dividing people. And so Bitcoin is the one thing that is not red or blue, it's orange, and it's for everybody. And I think that, the one thing that we all agree on is that if the only thing you have to do here is just participate with it. And when I think about the average person here in Canada, I think that that's, kind of what we keep going back to here is the average person is that, yeah, they're just not there. Because I want to ask you guys this question, because when you guys were going through that, I thought back to myself and I saw a couple comments too about what led us here. And Rajat, I probably know the answer to this, but Brian, like when you guys were in your 20s, when you first, got into the workforce, when you first started building up a bit of a surplus that wasn't just from cutting grass and selling beer cans, like, did you have a financial advisor, or were you guys kind of like self-managing your own funds? Because for me, I never had a financial advisor. I was always interested in finding, like, exploring it myself. And I think that that's a common theme amongst Bitcoiners, aside from like the short time in silver and gold. But like, I feel like there's too many people that just rely on the system. The only savings that they have is their pension, who is being managed by somebody else. And I don't think that they've ever seen or had the need to be sovereign, right? When I was investing, if I sucked at it, I'm going to lose all my money. So I'm going to improve that, right? If your financial advisor loses you some money, you either like complain about it, you tell your friends about it, or you fire them. But for me, like, I've always just had all of my chips on the table. I was in control of it. So I was the one who was exploring that information. Was that similar for you guys?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, personal finance has always just been a part of what I've been into.
I was terrible with money before. I was so bad with it, man. Until I was like 26, 25. Oh man, I was spending like $400 a month on takeout. And I wasn't making that much money to begin with, so that was terrible.
But like your investments though, did you have a financial advisor?
I didn't invest. I didn't have money to invest. All I did was I tried to get to the end of my month so that my next paycheck comes in and I'm not out of money. And I was so bad with money, man. I was terrible with it. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea. I did kind of, I don't know how I really, so once I did the CFA, once I went through the CFA, I think it helped me to change my perspective, and it gave me that idea that there is something better. But it was all based on fiat, right? It was all based on, buy index funds, buy real estate properties. I didn't really think about money that much before that. I was more, it was more like just, earn as much as you can and spend it on whatever you want to. But yeah, I see what you're saying. When you invest on your own, when you make the mistakes, when you have your own, what is it?
Skin in the game.
Yeah, skin in the game. When you have agency, when you have
Mhm.
control over your decisions, that's when you start seeing that making better decisions is the key to having more money. Because if you just save and save and save, you're eventually going to go broke. It doesn't even matter how much you save. Eventually, you're not going to be able to create value anymore, and your savings are going to lose everything to inflation. There's no way to avoid that. But people don't see that in the short term. They see that over the long term. They see that over 20, 30 years when it's too late. But with Bitcoin, and if you make your own decisions, your own financial decisions, you actually get that choice to be able to do things the right way and not mess things up, and make the decisions that are different from everyone else that could end up with you making a significantly higher amount of money than everyone else. So being able to retire, let's say, decades earlier than your peer group. Let's say you're a millennial. Millennials aren't going to retire until they're 70, 75. I don't even think they're going to be able to retire then. If you figure out how Bitcoin works, you're going to be able to retire in 10 years, 12 years. If you're a millennial, let's say you're 30 today. Actually, let's say you're 35 today. I think that's about the middle of the millennial age group. So you're 35 today. You're probably expecting that if you start investing today, you're going to have to invest $1,000 a month, and you're finally going to be able to retire at 65 with like a $2 million portfolio. And even then, how much is $2 million going to be worth? But if you buy Bitcoin, you can get to that $2 million portfolio. If you put $1,000 a month, you'll probably get to that $2 million portfolio within 10 years instead of 30. So if you see that, if you can actually make that decision actively for yourself, you're going to make much better decisions. If you have the choice to retire at 65 versus 30, or let's say 45, not 30, 45, why would you choose to retire at 65? But most people don't think of it that way. I think most people just, they rely on the index funds. They rely on Warren Buffett to tell you what to do. They rely on BlackRock, Larry Fink. Even so they used to rely on BlackRock and Larry Fink until they started talking about Bitcoin. And then they were like, oh, these idiots don't know what they're talking about. Right. And that's the majority of people.
I have a theory. So, all right. So we talked about the people that are like 70, 80 today and how like the Walmart example. And then we talked about the millennials. I have this thing that like, so my kids are 2 and 4. I think that in the optimistic future, when they're like 13, 14, 15, like, can you go and like be a barista? Like, we'll like, you know, like Starbucks and like coffee, like will still be there. And like I worked at a grocery store, like that'll still be there. But I think that also with Bitcoin and with software, AI, et cetera, like all this stuff, I think you're going to be able to, like, when you're 13, be able to work as like just like your screen name on the computer as like a QA tester for different software stuff and just get paid in Bitcoin to your username, like on the internet. And that's going to be like part-time work as like a young person is just going to look like they're already on, like, it's just going to look like group chatting. Like kids are already on Discord all day and then adults are already on Slack all day. It's the same thing. Like you're coordinating with a group of people to like do things on the internet and they're just going to be able to start doing that and get paid direct to their username. And it's like from the beginning, like their way of thinking about money and work is going to be different. Like that's going to be the first fresh like difference. Yeah, big time.
That's a great example there. And when I think about, not to get too far back into the circle here and kind of repeating ourselves, but I think that that's a big part of it. And I think that that's why governments right now not only are starting to realize that they can't stop Bitcoin, and I think that the negative filter that everybody has in their brains right now is from 16 years of negative marketing towards Bitcoin, from the media, from governments, from central banks, from the people who control the world. They've been nothing but negative towards Bitcoin for the last 16 years. And that's a really hard thing for people to unscrew from their minds without actually putting in the time. So that's one aspect of it. But the other one that Brian mentioned there was that kids, it will look much different between AI, robotics, a lot of these things replacing the jobs that we've had in the past. Like a kid right now, a 12-year-old kid could get onto Nostr. This is not advice, but it could happen. A kid could get onto Nostr. He could start either streaming on Zapstream. He could start sharing secrets about his video game adventure, whatever that is. And he could earn sats to a wallet. Not that that's like the greatest thing, but the point is that it could happen. It could not have happened 5 years ago because that kid would have had to walk into a bank account and get a bank account, or a bank and get a bank account, which you can't get unless you're 18, or you would have had to have your parents' permission there. So if you think about that just from like a 12-year-old perspective, but apply that to the whole world now, where anybody could do that anywhere on the planet without reporting that income. So we're moving into a much different world than we've been in here in terms of like humans going to work and funding the government. I think that dynamic has changed. And I think that that's why the US, like the most free country on the planet, is kind of leading the charge in that, because they know it's coming. And somebody mentioned in the comments that Trump's a populist. And that's kind of how I see it too. There's no way around it at this point.
Yeah. This also plays into the whole, like, Bitcoin works in an inflationary environment and a deflationary environment. Like, it's not just Bitcoin is not just an inflation hedge. Like Bitcoin is money that operates better in a deflationary environment. Like an example of, just talk about headlines like this. I have no idea how real this is or not, but like the state of Florida is looking at getting rid of property tax. Like there are pressures that are like, it's it's possible for the world, the humans that are already here, for us to all be way more efficient at working together already today. Just like right now, today, we all could be way more efficient at just simply working together and take the pressure off of all of each other. Like a rising tide lifts all boats literally is possible, because and that's the whole thing about like that. Then I want to talk about this word of like scarcity. Like, okay, Bitcoin has value because it's scarce, right? Or because it has a hard cap. Totally. But one downside of that is that again, when that average person hears the word scarcity, that's bad. Like that's negative. That's the worst. That's the word they've been fighting against their entire life. At every turn, they're fighting scarcity of money, scarcity of food, scarcity of like fighting that, right? And so it is very tough to be like, and then just that's what loops into the whole unit bias thing of the like, oh, can't buy whole Bitcoin, if there's only 21 million, like I think the best argument against Bitcoin is that like it won't change the like elite control dynamics of the world. Like just the people that are quote unquote Bitcoin rich or whatever, it's just perpetuating the same thing. I don't agree with that. And there's ways to unpack that and talk around that, but it's tough to combat that in short sound bites. It's hard to talk about that in short sound bites, which is why it is like, I can understand why some people have that like blocker on. And so the whole thing of like Bitcoin can work in a deflationary environment. It's more about just what bucket are you holding your money in? It's not about the units per se of anything. It's just simply, are you exposed to the like new technology of money, or are you exposed to the old technology of money? Like how much of your life is exposed to which bucket?
I think one of the main differences, though, like what you said, where people still have those, I guess, those wealth amounts. The rich are going to remain rich, the poor are going to remain poor. But I think the difference is that if you have a lot of Bitcoin and the world goes to a Bitcoin standard, you have to actually give away your Bitcoin. You have to give away your money. In the current system, let's say you have a massive house, you have a massive mansion, and you want to buy a car. You can go to a bank, take a loan against that mansion, never have to even think about giving that mansion away, never have to think about giving your wealth away. But you know for a fact that over time that the car's value is going to depreciate. You don't even care about that. All you care about is the interest rate that you're getting the loan at. You can bring your future consumption to the present. You can continue to make more and more money. You can build more businesses using that money. You can do whatever you want with that money. All you care about is the fact that you get to borrow money. That's why people borrow. That's why people buy real estate, right? They buy real estate because of the leverage.
Yeah.
But on a Bitcoin standard, that's not going to happen. So what's going to happen is, let's say you have a million Bitcoin. You can't really do anything with the Bitcoin because Bitcoin is money. It's not supposed to have utility. It's supposed to just be something that you hold on to delay gratification. And then when you want to get instant gratification, you give it away and you spend it. Let's say you start a business. You're going to have to pay your employees in Bitcoin. If we go to a Bitcoin standard, they're not going to want fiat currency. Why are they going to want pieces of paper when they can potentially have Bitcoin? So I get what you're saying, but I also get the other side of it, where the wealth is going to have to be moved around. It's not going to stay with the wealthy. It's if you have 1 million Bitcoin, let's say Michael Saylor has 500,000 Bitcoin today. He thinks the world is going to it's going to stay on fiat. No, eventually he's going to have to pay his employees in Bitcoin. He's going to have a dividend. They're going to have to pay that dividend in Bitcoin. They're going to have to do everything in Bitcoin. That Bitcoin is going to move eventually.
Yes.
But what they can do is they can create ways to generate more Bitcoin. So let's say they create a layer 2 or a layer 3, layer 4 on Bitcoin, and they start collecting fees on that. They can do all these things, but the wealth won't stay with. They'll have to take risks. That's the key.
Agree.
They'll have to take risks. In the current system, there's really no risk anymore.
Yeah. So why do you think? Completely agree. And this gets into my like why I believe. So this is why never sell is confusing. Like I was literally just talking to a friend earlier this morning, And they were like, yeah, they used Bitcoin to buy their house. And I was like, dude, that's a win. That is an on paper win. They made smart decisions, pulled forward their savings, were able to accomplish something. And I think up to this point, like Bitcoin, like influencers have not done a great job of like celebrating that win. Like we haven't done a great job of talking about that, which I think is, and I don't know where that came from. Like I don't know where that came from, but I'm glad to see that beginning to like crack a little bit, because there's not going to be a day where the switch flips. It's going to be gradual. Every single person is hitting that point every day where like Bitcoin, my wife and I have already we are at a way different place today than we would have if we were using fiat money for the last 10 years, period. Like I've already experienced that in my life for real every single day, the power of using this money instead of fiat money. And so I'm no longer waiting for this classic time in the future or whatever. Like it's already just happening. And every paycheck is a new opportunity to choose which bucket am I choosing to participate in.
Yep. I think every minute of every day is your choice of, do you want to spend time watching Netflix, or do you want to spend time reading a book? Do you want to spend time watching the news, or do you want to spend time learning and adding value to the world? Like I feel like every single minute of the day where we make that decision of where do we want to spend our time. And that was one of the things I took away from Jeff Booth was, that's something that we as Bitcoiners have to be thinking about. It's not just in November for, once every 4 years, you go vote. You vote every single day with your time, your energy, and where you're buying things from. So yeah, I completely agree with, both points there. And I think that if we are ever to get to a Bitcoin standard where Michael Saylor has to sell some of his 500,000 Bitcoin, I think he's going to have to spend much less of it at that point, like almost in an amount that they won't even notice. Because when we get to a point where people are demanding to be paid in Bitcoin, think about the value of that. That's kind of one of the major lags right now, is that not only are people trading their money for it, but they're not interested in actually accepting it for the value that they add to the world. But when that happens, whether it's through force or just because there's no other options, like the value of each Bitcoin is just going to be extraordinary. And so when you think about what that 500,000 Bitcoin has today in terms of purchasing power and leverage, imagine that at that point. Like he might have to spend 1 million sats for his whole team in a year. So yes, he's going to have to spend it.
That's why I like the word influence. Yeah, that's why I like the word influence, because at that point, it's not even about what are you buying or paying for. It's no, what are you making happen in the world?
Yep. 100%. And when you think about it like that, in terms of a guy like Michael Saylor, who's clearly understands where this is going, he sees it as leverage like I do too. Like one of the big reasons I'm buying so much Bitcoin right now is not just to hold on to it forever. I plan on leveraging it in the future through my business, for my family. I want things to get cheaper, but I also understand that there are going to be a ton of AI agents and opportunity within that space where I can pay them in Bitcoin. And when that happens, I'm going to have to spend a lot less Bitcoin versus somebody who's just getting into Bitcoin at that point. So I'm essentially buying future leverage for that. Plus, I'm going to be able to recruit the best talent in the world, because if you can entice people and say, hey, do you want to go work for this company and earn dollars, or come work for me and earn Bitcoin? At that point, you're going to get access to the best talent on the planet, and it's just going to snowball. That's why I love the flywheel, because that's exactly what they're doing at MicroStrategy right now in every aspect of it.
Yeah, they're definitely doing that, and I agree with you. They're going to be able to use Bitcoin to just hire the best talent. That's the leverage that they're going to have, because they're going to be able to find people from around the world who don't have Bitcoin, who want Bitcoin, who discover Bitcoin. Over the next 20, 30 years, there's going to be so many people who discover Bitcoin for the first time. People think, 95% of the world has heard about Bitcoin, they just don't want it. No, they haven't. I would say 95% of the world hasn't really touched Bitcoin. They just hear it as something that's very complicated. I don't really need this. I don't want this. I don't care about it. They just, at some point, like we're going to be able to buy houses for 1 million sats. We're going to be able to buy at some point I would say by 2030. I want to get a new car at some point. I think I'm going to be able to get a new car for 0.1 Bitcoin. Today, it'll cost you 0.5, 0.6. At that point, 0.1, 0.05, 5 million Satoshis for a car. I'm okay with that.
Future leverage.
Exactly.
On that note, what we talked about retirement and millennials wanting to retire. What age do you guys think you're going to be able to retire? Not retire, but like work on your own terms fully.
I'm kind of doing that now. Not that I have the finances for it, but I feel like it's mainly because my wife has that stable income. I don't know if she ever does want to quit, but at some point, I do think that my work, the stuff that I'm doing on YouTube, will be generating enough revenue to cover our expenses at all times. And I do this. I actually like doing it. So to me, it's not even work. I mean, I would never, if I can make money from making YouTube videos and adding value to people's day, then why not? I would do it forever if I could.
Yeah. I would, if I was gonna put a number on it, like I think like I'm 32, like I'm 33 right now. I think like mid 40s. I think pre 50, I'm gonna transition to a different phase of life for sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same. I would probably be disappointed if I was like forced to work past the age of 45, which is in about, I don't know, 9 years from now. That's 2 full Bitcoin cycles. That's a lot more countries coming into this thing. I think the world's going to look completely different at that point.
Yeah. I
think Bitcoin will be kind of like whether everybody really understands it or not, it's going to be the asset that everybody wants. I mean, honestly, like I don't think we're too far away from that not in terms of like the general population understanding that, but in terms of like the biggest pools of capital understanding that. And that's what really moves the needle here. It's not that, the guy who doesn't have a whole lot of savings when he decides to buy Bitcoin, it's good, obviously, but it's not going to move the needle. But I do think in the next, couple cycles, it's going to be a pretty big deal here. So I would say about the same.
I have 2 points. So the first thing,
go ahead, Rajat.
by the time you're 45, 99% of the Bitcoin is going to be mined.
That's another part of it too.
That's huge. That's crazy. And then the second thing is, even when people are, the majority of the world is never going to really learn about Bitcoin. I think I think there's a lot of people right now who know more about Bitcoin than the majority of the world will ever know. We've probably forgotten more about Bitcoin than the average person will know. The average person has no idea what they're doing. They don't really care. But the thing is, I think they're going to be forced into it. I think they're going to be just like Visa. Who understands how Visa works? Who understands how fiat works? Really, nobody.
Exactly.
Maybe a very small number of people. So what's going to happen is they're going to get screwed over by financial institutions. Financial institutions are going to hold on to Bitcoin. They're going to tell you, oh, you have a savings account where you get a 10% annual return in terms of US dollars. But the financial institution is going to be getting 30, 40, 50%. And it's like that. It's like that in anything, right? You have information asymmetry. The people who know what's going on can easily take advantage of everybody else. Like, for example, all of us right now, we could be promoting some random shitcoin and we can promote it to everybody who's listening to this, and we could make hundreds of thousands of dollars in minutes. I guarantee you that could happen. I have 100,000 followers on Twitter. I can scam the shit out of them, right? But that's the thing. I don't want to. My goal is to help people. My goal is to make sure that people actually get to where they want to be at some point. And the people who actually follow our content, the people who follow Brian, people who follow Jor, I think we're going to do really well regardless of whether we scam people, right? If we don't scam people, we're probably going to get much further. I think the people in our audience are probably going to want to work with us, and that's going to create so much more value. It's going to create synergy, if anything.
100%. I should give a couple shout outs here because we haven't mentioned this yet, an hour into this thing, but we have been on Zapstream. We got a couple zaps over there. We got a 1200 sat zap. We got an 888 sat zap, 5,000 sat zap, and a 69. Oh, and a 50. So it is Fat Zap Friday today over on Zapstream. And if you would like to send over some sats, we are going to do our best here. Jack Cohen is live. We're going to do our best with Maple Bitcoin to avoid having any sort of influence, any sponsors. We want this to be community minded, community based. And so if you do have some sats you want to throw this way, you can shoot it to the QR code right beside Rajat's head there. Maybe give it a point there, Rajat, if you can figure it out.
There.
Yeah, there you go. So you can just point your phone at the screen there. It's like a magic trick. You just send a couple sats and it shows up on our screen here. So thanks to the people who have zapped so far. We appreciate it. So with that, that was a really good chat, boys. I think that, I mean, we could probably spend a couple hours talking about this, and maybe we will in the future. But let's, do you guys want to get to some questions here? Do you want to keep any final thoughts on that?
Let's do the questions.
Okay. And somebody just sent in an 88 sad zap as I was talking about that. So thank you for that. You can send a message too, which we will read on the screen, except no F bombs unless you're sending at least how much, Rajat? How much do we
10,000.
have? 10,000? Yeah. Okay. So let's get to this one, because this is,
and wait, the price for that's going to increase over time because
exactly,
Bitcoin is scarce. So is yours. So are the F bombs.
We're we're locking it in. Well, let's throw an easy one out here. I don't know if you guys like giving price predictions or not, but this was an easy one. Omar, end of the year prediction. I'm going to say much higher. I'm not going to give any numbers. I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. That's kind of my thoughts on it. But we also have to keep in mind here that it is a completely illusionary standard that we're basing it off of. One can be created out of thin air, one is not. And so we're still at that point though. So I just think much higher. What do you think, Brian? What's your thoughts on it?
I'm going to say 147,000 Canadian dollars.
147,000 Canadian. That's lower.
That's
not
than that much more. That's up.
Yeah, at the peak it was what, 150?
Yeah. Brian's bearish.
That's what I'm sticking with.
Wow. Okay. Oh, that's sad. I mean, if anything, it could go anywhere, right? It's possible that it moves sideways. Like Brian said, it could move sideways until the end of the year, because the way that I think most people who own Bitcoin don't actually understand it, right? So they're selling their Bitcoin, they're giving it away. They're selling what they have because a lot of people probably think that it's going to move sideways. They think that we've reached the peak. The majority of the world doesn't understand Bitcoin. They don't think Bitcoin is going to go to $100,000 or more. So by the end of the year, just to mess with people, I wouldn't be surprised if it just moves sideways.
I can't see it. I mean, you guys both, I respect both your guys' opinions, but I just don't see how it's even possible for that to happen. You know, in 2017 and 2021, it was a lot of retail buying. There was a lot of hype. And I don't know exactly what triggered both those things, but I do think that before both of those things happened, where it really shot up both years, people were kind of saying about the same thing we'd be saying right now. Nobody really expects it, or, you know, what's going to cause it. Looking back, it's always easier to say, yeah, of course it was going to happen. The US government started buying Bitcoin, but who knows when, who knows how much, who knows what kind of impact that has. I really like Jack Mahler's talking about this the other day. It really hit home for me, because he talked about Trump and how America first he is, and how he wants to nationalize everything and bring production back to the US. And I feel like we're going through the same thing in Canada in terms of like the citizens. Everybody's like Canada first, like Team Canada. It just seems like that's going on all around the world right now. And he made the point saying that is a very inflationary environment, and it's going to be rocky for a while. He thought by the end of June or July, we'd be up in the 200,000 or 300,000 mark. I don't know. Summers are always just a complete write-off in Bitcoin. Anything financial related, summers, people just take off. They don't care. Fall, I think, is when we're going to see a big move. It might happen in the next couple of weeks. I don't know. None of us have a crystal ball here, but that's kind of a wide range of predictions there. We got a couple more here that I wanted to get to. Do you guys want to talk about, this was something we kind of mentioned before the show, so it worked out well. TCC says, do you think that there's a slim chance that the people who created Bitcoin can just switch off the Bitcoin network?
No.
And
you have to convince everybody on Earth.
Is there any other threats you think that would potentially stop Bitcoin?
No, you'd have to convince everybody on Earth to switch off the network. Everybody who's running a Bitcoin node. Anybody can run a Bitcoin node from home. So let's say if you run a node at your house and you believe in Bitcoin, why would you turn it off? If you have your wealth stored in Bitcoin, why would you turn it off?
Yeah, right. It's already just out there. There is no central place to turn it off.
I think that even if the entire world got together and said this Bitcoin thing's scary, which would never happen. But even if every government on earth got together and said, we need to shut this thing down, we need to shut off the internet. First of all, the internet goes down. I think that humans maybe survive 6 months for the most part. There'll be 20% of people who survive, 80% will be gonzo. But the other part of that too is that if the internet went down, there's nodes in space now. There's a satellite. I forget which satellite is running a Bitcoin node. But even if the internet went down on planet Earth, we're still good. We still get a backup copy of it. And then when the internet turns back on, we'll see a new block coming through there. So I don't think that there's any chance that that happens. I just don't see it. No. So the answer is no, I think.
There are nodes that are
to get
protected
super
by-
specific. To get super specific to TCC, also, like, I don't believe the people who created Bitcoin are alive. So I think it's literally impossible for that person to do anything about it.
There's also the Faraday bags, Faraday containers, where if you're running a node from a Faraday container, then nobody can stop it. It can't connect to the internet. You can't get what was that, EMP attack? Yeah, that's not possible. So all that's important. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think you can go to 100,000 computers and shut them off. And then based on what Brian was saying there, that's key too. That's really important. You can't convince everybody to turn off their computers.
Right.
This is from Perplexity. It says Alessandro Cesir, a project manager at Ledin and a Venezuelan national, is known for running a Bitcoin satellite full node in Brazil. The node downloads the Bitcoin blockchain directly from Blockstream satellite network, eliminating the need for traditional internet access. His work demonstrates the potential for satellite nodes to enhance Bitcoin's decentralization and accessibility, especially in remote areas. So that's already underway. So the answer to that would be no. Nobody can turn it off at this point. I don't know if I agree with Brian or not in the sense that they're dead, but I do think that they would have, based on the design of Bitcoin, based on how well thought out the whole thing was, they would have known at some point this thing is going to be worth a lot of money, a lot of purchasing power, I should say. They're going to be able to buy a lot of things with this. And I think that they knew also at the time that they would be enticed at that point to sell it. No human can avoid that. So I think they're either dead or they burned the keys to the Satoshi wallet, and whoever was, in charge of that aspect of it. I think that's it's not a possibility. But again, that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah.
Okay, next one here. Another softball for you guys. Actually, we got a super chat, so we should highlight that. Rajat, tell Brian real estate is a Ponzi scheme.
Brian,
there's an unreleased episode, Nav. There's an unreleased episode.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Real estate is a Ponzi scheme.
Did you guys do a debate on it?
Huh?
We didn't really do a debate. We had a conversation, but the sound turned out to be really bad. There was an echo, and I think we're just going to reschedule. We rescheduled, I think, for the 31st or something like that.
Month. Yeah.
What was the main takeaway from it? Not main takeaway, but what was a highlight? What was something you guys both agreed on?
Bitcoin is the future.
Brian?
Well, I thought you were gonna ask what we disagreed on. That was the one I was preparing.
Yeah, let's do that. That's a good point.
I think our main thing that I enjoy talking to Rajat about is like just real estate going to zero. I just don't believe that, and I don't believe that. I think because of the way that mortgages work in the United States, and that you can get 95% leverage on real estate, that I think Bitcoiners overemphasize how bad of an investment it is.
I think that it's going to continue to go up in terms of US dollars. It'll, your house is going to double every few years in terms of US dollars. But in terms of Bitcoin, it's going to have and then have again and then have again. If it's worth 5 Bitcoin today, it'll be worth 2.5 Bitcoin at some point. If it's worth 2.5 Bitcoin, it'll be worth 1 Bitcoin. Then it'll be worth 0.5, 0.25. It'll keep decreasing by 50% every few years because more dollars can chase housing, but more Bitcoin can't chase housing.
But when you look at just the amount that I put in for my down payment, and then the fact that the entire 100% is inflating on each other. If you look at my net worth priced in Bitcoin, it doesn't go down at the same rate that a single house goes down, like priced in Bitcoin. Because
But even
my
that leverage,
actual investment, right,
that leverage is because of fake money, right? I mean, if the
right.
fake money didn't exist, then you wouldn't be able to use that leverage. Why would a bank, and nothing against you, obviously, I'm not trying to say
No,
it
I
to
know.
you,
This is
but just why would a bank want to lend somebody Bitcoin to buy real estate?
they won't. I just think
Oh,
Jor got bored. Jor got
oh,
bored.
he got. I think he probably shut it off or something.
No. So I
I'm
think
back.
fiat money, I think fiat money is going to continue to exist on a Bitcoin standard the same way that altcoins are going to exist on a fiat standard, because credit is still going to exist because people are broke, because the average person is broke.
Yeah, I get that. I agree.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the way that the US dollar is valued today, like the entire world wants US dollars. I don't think that's going to be the case in terms of when we are on a Bitcoin standard, because right now there's no alternative. Before Bitcoin, there was no alternative. How many people could try? Let's say, for example, you went to a random shop in the middle of some random city. How are you going to pay them without US dollars? The world trusts US dollars. I think that trust is going to go to Bitcoin. I think that
Right.
trust is going to be absorbed by Bitcoin. And when you look at the fact that people buy real estate as a store of value, Bitcoin is directly competing with it. Like a few years ago, I didn't agree with that. I thought Bitcoin and real estate are completely separate. Real estate is shelter. Bitcoin is uh, Bitcoin is money.
Yeah.
We've confused real estate for money because we use it as a store of a store of value. But it's not supposed to work that way. We're not supposed house prices aren't supposed to go up in value over time. They're supposed to decrease over time, right? Because you're using the house, it's depreciating. You have to, let's say, for example, you have a house repair. Let's say you need to change the let's say you need to change the roof. If you bought that house in 1975, today you're probably paying 5 times the price that you paid for the house just for the roof. Right.
Yeah. I think all that's true. I think they both flow up and down. Bitcoin and real estate both flow up and down on top of the expanding or contracting fiat money supply. And I think the rate at which they flow up and down is closer together than Bitcoiners believe.
How so?
Because of the leverage is a big part of it. Because again, the 5% down that I put on the house, I have a 100% floating up and down. Whereas in the Bitcoin bucket, you have to physically get each part of Bitcoin with that 5%, and so that layers it out. And then because the current because the dollar-based system and the real estate-based system is still a bigger bucket than Bitcoin currently. Like those are reasons. I think that the housing, like there's an actual housing shortage compared to amount of household creation in the United States is like a thing that continues to keep a cap on supply.
But so many houses are unoccupied right now. Like
Right.
I was looking at statistics, 10% of houses in the US are unoccupied. I don't know what percentage of those are
Because
maybe
people can't afford down payments. Yeah, people can't afford down payments.
but
The same reason that they don't buy
that's the
Bitcoin.
broken part of it, right? What if those people
Absolutely.
discover Bitcoin and they start selling their houses? I think there's a lot that goes into this that people don't really. Okay, so if you think about it, how many houses are on sale right now? Maybe like 0.1%, 0.2, 0.3%. What
Yeah,
happens
there's
if
like
10% of houses?
600,000 in the United States.
So how many?
It's a few 100,000. It's some, I don't know the number, but
Okay.
it's like somewhere between 300, 600,000.
Okay, let's say it's 600,000. Let's say it's the high end. So 600,000 divided by there's 150 million houses in the US. So right now, 0.4% of houses are on sale.
Mhm.
And I think that's because the majority of people think that housing is going to increase in price forever. But the lens that they're looking at is the wrong one. Even if you use leverage, even if you add 10 times the risk onto your property, you're still not beating Bitcoin. Let's say your house goes up by 2-3% every year. Your Bitcoin will go up by 100%. If you use 95% leverage, you're using, 20 times, 25 times, 20 times. So you're using 20 times leverage. If your house increases by 3% per year, you're getting 60% returns. 60% returns are nearly unheard of for housing. And I don't even think BlackRock gets to that point. But you also have to consider the interest that you're paying. You also have to consider the maintenance, the repairs, the potential vacancies, the potential damage that clients can do on your house. There's so much more risk involved. You don't actually own the house. You have to pay property taxes forever. You have to deal with realtors. You have to deal with
in Florida,
appraisers. Sorry?
I just said except in Florida, maybe.
Oh, the property taxes. Right.
But yes.
That's a good point.
Yes.
That's important.
All that's right.
That's actually key. That's key. Maybe real estate in Florida will keep going up, but in general.
Absolutely. Like there's going to be the random deflation stuff is going, because how we've been talking about all day, if like the US starts buying Bitcoin and like, is power both an investor, like right now the US government backs the US, like the mortgage industry, because the mortgage industry like is the economy, like in the United States. If that influence moves to Bitcoin and is in process of moving to Bitcoin, absolutely, like completely. That's why I think, but that's also why I think that both are connected more than like people give it like credit for it. Like I think I actually think that real estate investors and Bitcoin investors have more in common than gold and silver like investors. Like I actually think it, because we can give the like gold and silver and scarce money and whatever, but I actually don't really think it's like that. Like I think Bitcoin and real estate investors have like a lot in common, and I almost think that both move up and down a lot of the same dynamics.
I agree with that actually.
I don't think they have anything in common, to be honest. I feel like real estate investors want rental income, they want leverage, they want tax benefits. Bitcoiners just want Bitcoin.
No, but that's influence. Why do they get all that stuff? Because they have influence in the United States. Like that's what's connected. And then the Bitcoiners are coming and saying, but is that dynamic of that having influence in the United States increasing wealth inequality? Absolutely. Like, absolutely, that's creating wealth inequality, because the barrier to entry of getting a home is the fat down payment that is hard to save for. Whereas Bitcoin there's no barrier to entry to buying that first dollar of Bitcoin. So from a good for society perspective, it's absolutely a positive shift. But I think from an influence perspective, that's very in the cash flow. I understand Bitcoiners like to hate on the cash flow element of it. No.
I don't hate it.
Yeah.
I like the cash flow. If I can keep getting cash flow in terms of Bitcoin forever, why not? Like if I can lend my Bitcoin to someone with no risk and they'll give me cash flow because they just want to hold that Bitcoin for, let's say, a status symbol, they're not going to lend that Bitcoin out. Oh, take my Bitcoin. As long as you're not lending it to someone, as long as I
mean the cash flow of real estate. I know that Bitcoiners like to hate on the cash flow of real estate. But I think the fact that real estate can create cash flow at the same time that it is still a scarce resource in the United States, so it is appreciating even at a lower percentage point. Like that's what's keeping the benefits like closer together.
But you can create your own cash flow with Bitcoin. You can sell your Bitcoin, right? You can give away, even if you were to give, let's say, for example, Bitcoin rises at 50% a year. You give away 5% of your Bitcoin every year. You're creating your own cash flow. You have the freedom. With real estate, the way that I see it,
volatility still screws that. I agree with you, but volatility still screws that.
But to fix that, you can just hold a larger amount of cash, right? If you hold, let's say, for example, you hold 2 years worth of cash, and then let's say you have $1 million.
So to hold that cash, why don't I just put a down payment on a house with that cash and hold the house, because the house keeps its fiat value?
But that's the thing. If you have the house, let's say at some point, all these investors figure out I don't think you're considering the risk. That's what I'm trying to say here. I can easily go buy index funds. I can get index funds, guarantee a 10% return every single year. But the thing is, when I need that cash, what if the index fund falls in value by 50%?
That's exactly why real estate's better than index funds. Exactly.
But that's what I mean. The cash gives you liquidity. The cash is there whenever you need it. It doesn't go volatile. It doesn't go crazy. It doesn't increase and decrease.
That's why. So sit with the down payment in a house, and then you have a HELOC on that, and the HELOC just stays open, and there's your liquidity.
But that's the thing. You're depending on the bank giving you that HELOC. What if the bank says to you at some point, "No, we're not lending you money anymore"? That can happen. A lot of people don't see that happening. A lot of people don't think that can happen, but that can happen at any moment. Like they can screw you. they can rug pull you whenever they want to, right?
Yeah.
That's I think that's the
Yeah.
key.
Yeah.
They can
Who
rug
gave
pull
the
you
super
whenever they
chat?
want to. They
'Cause I
don't
love-
even have your own. One of the other things is you don't even have your own deed, right? You don't technically own the house. The bank still owns the house. Everything is owned by the bank. Even with fiat, the bank owns the money. Like the money isn't even yours.
Here's why I think that real estate and Bitcoin, not today, but in the couple years, will be looked at closer than Bitcoin and gold. I think that's because we're not at the point yet where real estate investors understand that Bitcoin is a superior asset to real estate. They will, and it'll start flowing into Bitcoin. Also, where I see it, and this is kind of my two examples that I like to use here, is the first one. If you go to the bank and you say, "Hey, bank, I want a loan." Like historically within real estate, that's one of the strategies that they've used is you buy real estate, you put a down payment down, the equity in the house goes up, you go to the bank, you refinance that one, you put the proceeds into a new house, and you just keep doing that. The rich dad, poor dad model, right? I think that that's going to start happening in Bitcoin. I don't think we're there yet because banks don't see Bitcoin as the pristine asset that it is. Because let's say that the housing market started to cool down and actually collapsed. At that point, the bank has a couple options. They know you're not going to keep paying your payments every month. So they have to figure something out. They have to maybe sell one of your houses, maybe two of your houses. That's a huge headache for them. They have to find some buyer in that local market to buy that house from you or from them, I guess, because they essentially own that in that case. But with Bitcoin, if you stop making your payments on it, they could take a portion of your Bitcoin. It doesn't matter how much it is. They could sell it in 5 minutes. So banks are going to start looking at Bitcoin as the pristine asset that they look at real estate as today. And I don't think that strategy that has always worked is going to work in the next decade. We're not quite there yet, but that's kind of where I see it going to.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it from that perspective, what happens when BlackRock no longer wants to or Blackstone no longer wants to manage the properties that they have? What if they want to completely get rid of them? I think
that's a big risk,
right? And that's massive. What if so right now we have 0.04% of houses on sale. What happens when 10% of houses go on sale, 5% of houses, 3% of houses go on sale? Right? The market's going to start crashing during COVID. And again, Brian, nothing against you. I think the way that you're doing it is perfectly fine. You have a limited number of real estate. There are people out there who have 50, 100, 1,000 properties, and they're the way that they're thinking of it is, if I increase my rent by $50 a month, I get the benefit. They don't really care about that. I know how you do it. I know you care about your tenants and all that. We talked about it in the podcast. Again, nothing against you, but I'm just saying, at some point,
I don't take offense to any of this. I exactly love this topic. Like I exactly love this topic. And I don't think, I would just say that like I don't think that a flood of the market of investment properties I don't see that happening. Like, and I think that there's so much pent-up demand for household formation in the United States that people will absorb that demand.
I don't know. I don't think that there is.
People should watch Altos. I really like Altos Research. Is a great real estate data channel for the United States. Altos Research.
See, the only issue is the way that I see it. If governments if they really want to fix the world, they benefit from making housing abundant. Let's say
I don't think the governments don't want to fix the world. Bitcoiners want to fix the world. Like governments don't want to.
But that's the thing. At some point, Bitcoiners will be in the government. If Bitcoiners are in the government and they want to actually fix the world, we're going to see housing fall like crazy. We're going to see prefabricated homes. We're going to see 3D printed homes. We're going to see rentals probably become much more difficult to maintain. Like, what if they say, oh, outside parties can't buy properties in the US? You have to be a US citizen to buy properties in the US. A lot of other countries are doing that. A lot of there are.
I think you'd have to change the mortgage dynamics. I think what would have to happen is we'd have to change the mortgage dynamics to bring it back in line.
Even the mortgage only works because the rest of the world is willing to hold on to US dollars.
Absolutely.
If there's nobody willing to hold on to US dollars and Bitcoin actually becomes the future money, all of that collapses. All of that breaks apart. Like,
I think real estate investment. But what's still stopping the people that build those prefabricated homes from? Why would they sell them? Why wouldn't they just build to rent?
Why would they want to become a real estate management company?
Probably just because the cash flow is higher.
But that's the thing. Why would you want cash flow if you can sell the house for Bitcoin? Let's say you can sell the house for Bitcoin today for 5 Bitcoin. Your cash flow in the rest of your life is probably not going to be 5 Bitcoin. Right? If you could sell the house and you can have the equity of 1 Bitcoin, you get 1 Bitcoin out of it. You may never, ever get 1 Bitcoin in cash flows.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said,
this is post. But we're talking about a post mortgage being done environment where Bitcoin is 10 million a coin.
I don't even think that's going to be needed. I think when Bitcoin is $1 million. So today a house costs the median house in the US costs 4.5 Bitcoin, 5 Bitcoin or so. Something like that. Yeah. So let's say 4.55 Bitcoin. At some point, you're not going to be able to sell your house for 4 or 5 Bitcoin. You're going to be selling it for 0.1 Bitcoin. You're going to be selling it for 0.01 Bitcoin. And I don't even think that we have to have mortgages collapse for that to happen. I think what's going to have to happen is a lot of these financial institutions are going to push more Bitcoin to their clients because they benefit from it. If Bitcoin's price goes up, think about how much more money BlackRock makes.
Yeah.
And to them, it's passive income. They're just holding Bitcoin for people. They don't have to manage anything. They don't have to deal with property taxes. They don't have to deal with anything like that.
Hurricanes.
All they deal with is the private keys. Exactly. The private keys. Once you have the private keys set aside, you're good. You don't have to deal with anything else. It's to their benefit. It's these. I think a lot of real estate investors are thinking that companies want the cash flow and the tax benefits, but they don't give a they don't give a shit. They really don't. What they care about is total returns. They care about the people who they care about being able to get as much of a return as possible for their customers. And if holding on to Bitcoin is going to do that for them, then that's what they're going to do. Like, think about it. If MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor started buying real estate prices would have skyrocketed instead of buying Bitcoin. If Bitcoin wasn't a thing, real estate would probably be 10 times the price where it is today. If gold didn't exist, if the stock market didn't exist. But I think what's happening is over time, people are diversifying out of real estate and into Bitcoin. I think that's what's going to happen. I've spoken to real estate investors. I've spoken to there's a guy who runs a brokerage. He was saying people are selling their real estate for Bitcoin. They're buying Bitcoin by using the proceeds of their real estate sale, and they're not buying more real estate. So if that continues to happen, I do think that people are going to move to Bitcoin. It's all sentiment. If house prices dropped 50% today, do you think that the same real estate investors that are telling you to buy as much real estate today are going to continue to do that? No, they're not going to do that. They're going to move on to the next best thing because to them, it's about the cash flow, right? To them, it's about not even the cash flow. To them, it's about having an audience, right? To them, it's about being able to cater to an audience that will continue to do what they want and make as much money from that as possible. But at some point, that's not going to work anymore. At some point, real estate is going to come out as, I think of it as a Ponzi scheme.
Dude, Thrago, I really like Thrago in the comments, but last two have been really good comments. Thrago says Rajat is not giving enough credit to the leverage aspect. And then he just said, and then the next one, put up his next one too, because his next one is a great point too. About the what's scarce, talk about scarcity. Physically making things is hard. Physically making things is hard.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. But even then, we can still build more. That's the option. At some point, we'll get better at building.
Yeah.
At some point, we'll be able to build, right? But you can't create more Bitcoin. No matter what happens, less and less Bitcoin is going to be chasing housing. There's going to be fewer and fewer people who are willing to give away 5 Bitcoin for a house, then 4 Bitcoin, then 3 Bitcoin. They don't care about the leverage. The leverage doesn't matter. The leverage is just a way to benefit people who are wealthy and to take money away from the poor. Like when you're using leverage to buy real estate, you're not hurting the people around you. You're hurting the people in, let's say, I own a house and I got a mortgage. If you go to a bank and you get them to create more money for you, you're not hurting your own community. You're hurting the people in other countries who are saving in dollars. Let's say, for example, I can go and borrow as many US dollars as I want to. I can pay for whatever I want to in Jamaica with US dollars. I got that money created out of nothing, and they had to work for it, right? So that's a broken system on its own. And I know that's probably not going to change the value of real estate. Most people don't really care about that. Most people don't know about that. But I think what's going to happen is it's going to open up an option for those people in Jamaica to no longer want US dollars. And that's what breaks it. That's what makes it so that the mortgage system doesn't work. The way that mortgages are today, they don't work anymore. Why would banks want to lend you US dollars when they could just buy Bitcoin with it? When they can lend it to MicroStrategy and buy Bitcoin bonds?
Okay. I want to give my take on this as well, because I think it's important to kind of find some happy medium here. Obviously, I probably agree more so with Rajab, because I sold my real estate, my rental house a couple of years ago, and bought Bitcoin with it. But I kind of foresee a future here. I think we should be careful when we're talking about real estate, because there are different parts of real estate. There's oceanfront property. There's really scarce farmland, which you can create more of. But there's a lot of parts of the world you can just build more of, or there's abundant land in that area, or you can stack on top of that. I think the two things are going to be big drivers within real estate. Number one is going to be the tokenization of real estate, which is absolutely coming. And I think if I had the choice between maybe selling some of my Bitcoin and buying a fraction of a oceanfront property in, I don't know, Colombia, I might buy some property just to kind of like, I don't know, I see both as scarce. But I'd never sell some of my Bitcoin to buy a rental house right now. That's one. I think the property tax is another big reason why Bitcoin is better than real estate today, because it doesn't have the leaks the property does. Like if you had a house for 100 years, by the end of that 100 years, you're going to be left with almost with nothing because of property taxes, because of all the maintenance. So property tax tokenization, I think the real estate will kind of shift. And we should be careful when we're talking about normal real estate that people live in, versus Airbnbs and just random cities, versus scarce farmland, oceanfront property, because those three things are different and they're more scarce and they're more desirable, I think. And some of them will continue to go up much more than inflation. And some of them, I think, will actually fall compared to everything else.
But even then, when you're looking at inflation, you're looking at it from the wrong perspective, right? You're not looking at it in terms of Bitcoin. Even farmlands, the scarcest farmland on earth, will probably still go down in value in terms of Bitcoin over the next 20, 30, 50 years.
Do you think, okay, that's a good question, because that's what I was going to ask you. Like, do you think that over the next couple of decades, do you think that Bitcoin will actually outperform those really scarce properties like oceanfront property, like farmland? Do you think that Bitcoin is going to continue to outpace those?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't see. Do people want more optionality to buy the things that they want, or do they want to live in front of beachfront property? Like, do they want freedom, or do they want beachfront property? I would rather want freedom. I would rather want freedom, right? I would rather choose to. And plus, even Dubai showed us that you can build more beachfront property.
Yeah.
So
I just think that there's a lot of people who are still stuck in that world that will never change their mind no matter what. They're always going to be real estate first. And I think as long as those people are alive and have influence and pools of capital, it's going to keep driving those prices up. I do think over time, maybe 50, 100 years, as those people leave this earth, that's when Bitcoin it's a no-brainer. But I do think over the next couple of decades, some of these scarce properties around the world will actually compete with Bitcoin. I don't know if they'll outperform them, but I do think that they'll continue to compete with Bitcoin. But that's different than just like a random house in a random city. I think those are going to fall.
yeah. And I mean, if you think about it, there are a lot of baby boomers who own tons of real estate right now. And let's say there are baby boomers who own Bitcoin versus baby boomers who own real estate. And they pass it on to their kids. What do you think is more likely to happen? The baby boomers' kids sell the real estate and buy Bitcoin, or they sell the Bitcoin and buy real estate?
That's what I mean. That's where I think the trend really, that's the catalyst. Yeah.
Yeah.
The baby boomers.
And baby boomer kids are millennials. Millennials are the perfect generation to study Bitcoin, to understand where Bitcoin
100%.
is going. Right. And that just, like, I had a conversation with a friend who had a client who had 90 acres of real estate, and he wants to keep it because he wants to continue with his family traditions. You could do the same thing with Bitcoin, right? You can just hold on to Bitcoin. You can pass it on to your kids. You can take it wherever you want in the world. Yeah. I mean, the way that I see it, Bitcoin is real estate is a business. Bitcoin is savings. That's it.
Yeah, we just haven't got to that point yet where people really see
No, we
that.
haven't.
I do think that there will be exact same where families, the generational wealth, they're actually, instead of looking after their real estate portfolio, they're actually managing their Bitcoin portfolio. We're nowhere near that. We're 16 years into this thing. We are incredibly early, but that I do think that that's coming. A couple quick shout outs here before we go continue on here. We got a 2100 sat zap, 2975 sat zap, and a big fatty from our friend Ian, 8,888 sats for the channel. So thank you. That's very generous of you, Ian, and
Huge.
the other anonymous donors there. Appreciate it. Okay, so that was a good conversation, boys, because I think the one thing that we struggle with within Bitcoin is just, whenever you're on a Bitcoin podcast, it's always Bitcoin. It's always Bitcoin versus gold versus real estate. There's never anybody from the other side of it. So I loved the conversation today. I didn't have a whole lot to add, but I think that there were some really good points raised. Do you guys want to do some more Q&A, or do you want to wrap her up here? Do you guys? We kind of talked about wrapping it up a while ago. Hey?
Yeah, hit it if there's a couple more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rajat, you good too?
I'm good. Yeah, we can keep going.
Okay.
That was a great conversation, by the way, Brian. I really
better
appreciate
than the first
that
one, even. It was better.
Yeah, I thought that was valuable.
Good.
Even for me, it changed my mind, my frame, the way that I think. I mean, I hadn't really thought of the fact that you don't have property taxes in California, and that's
No. There's
Florida.
definitely property taxes in California. Florida is exploring
Florida,
getting rid of them very, very early. But to that point, though, California does have a cap on how much they can increase every year. Whereas a state like Texas, it's uncapped how much it can increase every year. And so, like, a lot of people talk about, like, this is a tangent, but one thing that a lot of people talk about geographic arbitrage in the United States and, like, oh, this state, like, I actually don't agree with that, like, at all either. Like, I just think the expensiveness or, like, the environment economy of the United States I don't think there's a lot of trade-offs from the economy between California or Texas as much as people try to say there is.
Here's an interesting one here, boys. Do you guys have any advice on living on Bitcoin?
Yeah, I can hit this. So I think advice for living on Bitcoin is, and I'm going to talk from a US perspective, like that's what I know best. It's a transition thing. So don't think about it as an all or nothing thing. Think about it as a transition. Think about every single paycheck and just what percent of that paycheck is direct depositing into Bitcoin versus direct depositing into dollars. And you can also think about, there's like 3 buckets of your money, right? There's like your short term, what you need this month and this week. There's the like medium term of like, saving for like Christmas gifts or like your property taxes or that like, that 6-month vacation, like 6 months away. And then there's the like long-term, like quote unquote retirement, or whatever that means, right? A lot of Bitcoiners in those buckets, they're already at 100% in the very, very long-term bucket. And then in the short-term bucket, again, speaking very, very generally, short-term bucket, a lot of people are 100% fiat in that bucket, right? The medium bucket, the vacation that's 6 months away, or the property taxes that are 6 months away, or Christmas 6 months away, that opens up a really interesting conversation for people. And so the advice on how to like quote unquote live on Bitcoin or push yourself to live on Bitcoin, if that's your goal, is to really take a look at that medium bucket. I would write down all 3 buckets, like short, medium, long, and just ask yourself, like, what percent of my money in each of those buckets is in Bitcoin versus fiat? And then that medium bucket is there's 2 things to do. One, in that medium bucket, test out increasing that Bitcoin percentage and just feel out how you feel, because you still have to deal with the volatility in that thing, but feel out how you feel. Another one, in the short-term bucket, pick out one bill. Pick out your like cell phone bill or your water bill or whatever, okay? And try that one. Try to be like, oh, you get paid on the 15th and your water bill is due on the 27th or whatever, right? Okay? With that money, like, and that's exactly, in both of those buckets are exactly where you move the needle and you work with your family and you think about how you feel and how your budget works moving from fiat to Bitcoin.
Rajat?
Yeah, I think that I guess, Brian, you were talking about almost like a sinking fund.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the way that I see it, I mean, I agree with you. I think that it's just I think it's just you use Bitcoin as a savings account. If you need more fiat, you sell some Bitcoin. If you have extra fiat, you buy more Bitcoin. That's it. That's the way that I see it. I think that's the simplest way to see it. I don't like the idea of borrowing money against Bitcoin. The reason why I say that is because if you borrow money against Bitcoin, I know it's going to work for people. It's probably worked for you guys. I don't know if you've tried it before, but I don't like it because you have to give your Bitcoin to someone. And if they go bankrupt, you have that tail event that could happen and you could lose 2 times the Bitcoin. Let's say, for example, if you have to put in a certain amount of Bitcoin, you take on 50%. What is it? Value to whatever, like the amount of debt that you take on. So you take on a 50%. Let's say you need 1 Bitcoin, you give 2 Bitcoin, you get back 1 Bitcoin worth of cash. The issue is that if you just spent that 1 Bitcoin, you could start stacking it again. At some point, you'll get that Bitcoin back. With the 2 Bitcoin, you're always going to be worried. What if I don't get this Bitcoin back that I borrowed against for my expenses? What if you don't get that Bitcoin back? That's the issue. I see that debt on Bitcoin is a little bit more risky than debt on any other system. Let's say in the current system, you can borrow money against real estate. The thing is that if you don't pay back that money, the bank can create more money and fulfill whoever lent them that money. Let's say they have their depositors, they can print more money. The Federal Reserve will go and print more money. We'll find ways to replenish that money and create more and just make it out of thin air, pay back the depositors. You can't do that with Bitcoin. So if people are borrowing against their Bitcoin, they have to take this into account. You have counterparty risk. You are giving your money to your lender and they're giving you back fiat. That lender may never give you your Bitcoin back. That's a risk that you have to think about. The way that I see it, just sell Bitcoin when you need fiat, buy more Bitcoin when you have extra fiat. It's as simple as that.
I think you also have to factor in though that you should only take a loan against your Bitcoin last resort. Like if you can use something else as collateral, if you don't really need that thing, like let's say it's a new quad or a new truck or whatever, I have no issues with lending against Bitcoin if it's like your only option versus I still think it's a better route than selling it, because even if the bank were to rug you there, your Bitcoin's gone. If you sell your Bitcoin and buy whatever you're looking for, your Bitcoin's gone without you even doing anything there. That's kind of where I differentiate the two, is like living on a Bitcoin standard. I'm not fully there either. And I loved what Brian said there in terms of like the transition. That's the best way to look at it. I think you have to be really aware of like where you are, where you stand, where we are in the cycle, what your monthly expenses are. Like you can't just freeball this thing and expect to make it out alive. Like you're going to get absolutely railroaded. And trust me, because I've done it before. So you have to figure out, kind of where we are, not month to month or day to day, but like big picture. Are we at a point in a cycle where we're likely to be going upwards now, or are we likely to be going downwards now? Because if we're going to be going upwards, then take a little bit more of the bucket that Brian was talking to there, move the needle up, hold a little bit more Bitcoin. If you think this thing is going to go up in the next 365 days, allocate a little bit more to Bitcoin. If you think there's a chance that, we've kind of reached the peak here and we're going to be seeing some sell-offs, hold more cash. Like you just have to be really aware of where we are and what your expenses are before you can take that on, because it is not an easy thing to do, but I think it's a very worthwhile venture.
Yep.
Is it okay to take a bank loan to buy Bitcoin? That's another one too. I don't think so. I'm not into that yet. That's kind of where I was going with that, is like, if you need a medical bill, you need new tires, if you need something, maybe it's an option there for you, or just sell some Bitcoin. Like I'm not really either way.
I think he's talking about take a loan and then buy Bitcoin.
Buy more Bitcoin.
Take a fiat.
Yeah, I don't like that
idea.
That's kind of what Rajat was going with. Whenever you take a loan against your Bitcoin, there's a real big risk that bank could rug you. Not at 80K, but let's say it gets to 100 or 500.
No, put up the question. Put up the question again.
What he's saying, I think what he's saying is that
a loan.
You borrow money to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I would actually be okay with that over borrowing money against my Bitcoin.
I would say this. Yeah,
so it's the opposite of what you were saying. You're not actually you're not borrowing against your Bitcoin. You're borrowing money from the bank. Let's say unsecured.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I would personally rather do that over borrowing against my Bitcoin.
Right, because there's no risk there, right? You're not using your Bitcoin as collateral in that sense. Your Bitcoin's not at stake.
If anything, the bank is at risk, because if you don't pay them back, then what are they going to do?
No, I love that strategy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend it to everybody though, right? Because let's say, for example, if you don't know what's happening with the market, if you haven't studied Bitcoin, you borrow money to buy Bitcoin, you get a $50,000 loan, buy half a Bitcoin, and then Bitcoin starts dropping. It drops 40, 50%. You sell because you panic. You're left with no Bitcoin and you have a loan to pay back.
Yeah.
Just a cash flow thing. Like, look, in the United States, send out a bunch of like 0% credit card balance offers. Like, yeah, if you can take that out, you're good at your monthly cash flow, and you're gonna pull that Bitcoin purchasing forward and service the payment. That's like, no, that world is interesting, and that's exactly the fiat money system.
Yeah. I completely agree with Carl here. You said the bank's the one left holding the bag, but you need a very low fixed interest rate. I don't know if I would say very low, like anywhere between like 3 to 10%. I would say that's kind of a comfortable for me anyways, because you have to look at this two ways. Like whatever you're paying on the loan, that's your outflow. If that's 5%, if that's 6%, if that's 7%, that's your outflow in this agreement. Bitcoin's compound annual growth has been 60%. That's a very large spread there that you can, at this point, take advantage of. So I don't think it's totally, I think the fixed part, a longer term rate is good. If it's more than 5 years, I think that's perfect. And yes, absolutely don't use a credit card when you're paying 20%. That doesn't make any sense. What's going on in the chat here?
We're getting attacked by scammers. Moon on ETH. It's okay, I got it.
So make sure to could you imagine if there was like Bitcoin bots like this? That just shows how disconnected we are from the crypto world.
Crazy.
No, it's good. I think that's good advice, boys. I think that it is something that people should be exploring within Bitcoin. I do love the idea of looking at it as in terms of spending your Bitcoin, not selling your Bitcoin. Those are two much different things. And I think, as Bitcoiners, we need to get this thing flowing around. The reason why the US dollar has been so successful through the years is because it's being used. It has velocity. People want it. Businesses are accepting it. We need to start moving this stuff around. And so I like the idea of if you do have a purchase and there's somebody who's willing to accept Bitcoin, absolutely. And then just replenish it. Take whatever fiat that you were going to use. Don't worry about the taxes, because if just think about it this way. If you were to, let's say you need a new set of tires, you got $2,500, you find a Bitcoiner willing to do it that day. Instead of just giving him $2,500 worth of cash, you actually go and buy Bitcoin, pay him in Bitcoin. There's going to be no sort of gain there. It's the same day. It's very irrelevant. People get too distracted and too turned off by the taxes here. And it's, I think that's another rabbit hole to go down, is the tax implications of it, but just don't overthink it. I think that's where I would leave my thoughts on it. Holy man, what's going on here?
Keeps going.
This is insane. Oh, I can't even delete it. That's super annoying.
It's on mine.
Super annoying.
Oh, I'm just working as hard as I can to delete them.
Yeah, I see that, Rajat. You're doing pretty quick work there, man.
It's crazy. How are there so many of these?
Okay, well, as much as I don't want to be beaten by the bots, we're coming up to 2 hours here, and let's start wrapping things up here, boys. So, last thoughts, Brian. Do you what's your main takeaway from the chat today? Where do you want to leave with people?
Yeah, no, love this a lot, guys. Really appreciate the invite. Glad to talk to Rajat about real estate. Thank you guys for just putting out positive Bitcoin content on YouTube. If people want to search Brian Harrington on YouTube, try to upload a few times a week. Been really working on that. And then I'm at Brian Harrington on Twitter as well.
Nice.
Rajat, what do you want to send people in the weekend with?
Study Bitcoin. Buy Bitcoin. That's it. Makes
sense. I would echo that. Thanks, everybody. Sorry about the attacks there. We will be back at this time, the exact same time next week, Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern time, Maple Bitcoin channel. We're trying to wean it off our channels here, but it's good. We had about 250 people here in the chat today, so it's good. Nice. We had some really good questions, and thank you to the people who zapped over on Zapstream and the people who sent to the QR code beside Rajat's head there. So if you're watching this later, that's an easy way to do it, and we very much appreciate the support. And we'll keep battling here with the bots, with the government, with anybody who's against Bitcoin. So thanks, Brian, for being on here,
and we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys soon.
That
you
was
guys.
awesome. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Jor.
See you guys.